Hi, I'm Michael Senoff, founder and CEO of HardToFindSeminars.com. For the last 5 years, I've interviewed the world's best business and marketing minds. Now my challenge is to build the world's largest free resource for online, downloadable audio business interviews. I've learned a lot in the last 5 years, and today I'm going to show you the skills you need to survive.
A business of your own, even a startup, even a sideline, and certainly a home-based business of your own, is the best tax shelter left in the United States.
Hi, this is Michael Senoff with Michael Senoff's HardToFindSeminars.com. Here's another money-making interview. It's with a gentleman named Ed, the tax man. Ed began his career as a legislative analyst for Representatives Jack Kemp and Dick Cheney. He earned his law degree at the University of Cincinnati College of Law, where he served as the executive editor of the University of Cincinnati Law Review. Ed, the tax man, currently focuses his tax practice helping entrepreneurs and investors avoid tax mistakes. He has appeared on over 200 radio and television broadcasts, including CNN, Fox News, and even the short-lived Roseanne Barr Show. I sent questions out all over the world to my students at HardToFindSeminars.com, asking them to send Ed their most pressing questions on how to save money paying less taxes. You want better tax strategies? Don't pay more than you have to. Listen to the answers Ed gives flawlessly about commonly ignored deductions. You need to claim every deduction that you're entitled to on your tax return. That means taking the time to review these frequently overlooked deductions. You're about to hear the most commonly ignored deductions, deductions that could save you tens of thousands of dollars a year. Get ready. This interview is 75 minutes, and I hope you enjoy. Please note, after this interview, you'll want to go to a more comprehensive PowerPoint presentation in recording number 2, which can be found at www.hardtofindseminars.com/taxman.htm. That's www.hardtofindseminars.com/taxman.htm. There you'll find a more detailed presentation which Ed refers to throughout this question and answer session. Enjoy. I really appreciate you taking the time and talking and answering some of the questions from some of our subscribers here at HardToFindSeminars.com. What a lot of people want to know is, why are you qualified to answer these questions on taxes? How long have you been involved in dealing with saving people money on taxes?
Mike, I've been involved in taxes since I got out of law school, which was in 1992. I started as an editor at the National Underwriter Company in Cincinnati, Ohio, which publishes tax-oriented books and magazines for insurance agents and financial planners. I was a financial planner myself for several years, working hands-on with investment clients, and in 2000 I started my own firm. So it's a combination of training, academic background, and most important, real-world experience. I've worked with hundreds of business owners and entrepreneurs over the last 7 years, seen the challenges they face, and helped them save a lot of money.
Now, you've appeared on over 200 radio and television broadcasts, including CNN, Fox News, and you even got on the Roseanne Barr Show, that short-lived talk show, where she dubbed you as the funniest tax guy in America. Is there anything funny about paying taxes?
Well, there's nothing funny about paying too much tax. And the truth is, there's a lot that's entertaining about the tax system. It's just so absurdly complicated. On the Roseanne Show, I talked about voodoo animal sacrifice as a legitimate business deduction. And I think it's hysterical that our tax system is so complicated that we can make that argument and win.
You began your career as a legislative analyst for Representatives Jack Kemp and Dick Cheney. What was that about? What was that like?
Well, that was my first position after graduating from college, working as a staff aide on Capitol Hill. I had majored in history and minored in government in college, and when I got out of college, the history companies weren't hiring. So I ended up working for the government. It was a great background in understanding how Washington works, how politics works, and I was on Kemp's staff when the 1986 tax reform bill passed. So it became a foundation for my knowledge of the tax system and how how it evolves and adapts over time.
From your experience over the years talking to thousands and thousands of businesses and people all related to paying taxes, what's your take on the American public? Is the American public paying too much taxes?
Absolutely, the American public is paying too much tax, simply because they don't know all of the concepts and strategies they can use to pay less. And most accountants aren't proactive. They don't sit down with their clients and say, here are the things you can be doing. You know, the IRS talks about the tax gap. That's taxes that people don't pay because they're cheating or not reporting their income or whatever. Well, I think that the overtax gap, the amount that people pay more than they have to, is probably just as big as that uncollected tax gap. People simply don't have the right information, and I've built a career around delivering that information in plain English, in usable format, and with some humor that's the spoonful of sugar that helps the medicine go down.
When I sent out the mailing to my list at hardtofindseminars.com, I fielded questions from thousands of people all over the country and all over the world. I did note that you are a U.S. tax expert, and many questions came back, and we picked out the best of the best. And so I'm going to ask you, on the behalf of my subscribers, some of their most pressing tax questions. I do want to note that many of the questions came back regarding the conspiracy theory, that we don't really have to pay income tax. And I want to start out from the beginning. I want you to give a disclaimer, or I'll give a disclaimer, that this is not an interview related to ways of avoiding paying income tax.
First of all, let me start by saying we are talking about ways to avoid the income tax. We're talking ways to avoid a legally imposed tax. Where you run into trouble is when you look for ways to evade paying a legitimately imposed tax. There are all sorts of theories as to why the tax is illegitimate. The 16th Amendment to the Constitution was not properly ratified. Filing a tax return violates 4th Amendment, 5th Amendment, 13th Amendment, 14th Amendment rights. Some very clever arguments. My favorite argument that people have actually taken to court is that the U.S. federal courts, the flags in the federal court, have a yellow fringe on the American flag. That means it's a court of admiralty and has no jurisdiction over the tax protester. And it amazes me that people have taken that argument to court. The bottom line is, you can believe these theories if you want. And frankly, I think a lot of people believe them simply because they want to believe them. But they don't matter until the Supreme Court says that the tax is unconstitutional. That's simply how our government works. The tax is constitutional until the Supreme Court says it's not. That's not going to happen in your lifetime or mine. The arguments, while entertaining and clever, ultimately have no legal value, and there has been no case in U.S. judicial history where the court has found that the tax was not constitutional. There have been cases where tax protesters have been found not guilty of criminal tax evasion, but that's a very different thing from saying that you don't have to pay the tax. Unfortunately, for better or for worse, you have to pay the tax.
Okay, great. All right, let's go into some questions. Here's a question from Lalita. Ed, our company is a single-member LLC in New Jersey, and the member is not an employee or W-2. The LLC is being taxed as a sole proprietor. The company has one employee that is the son of single member aged 20. Can this LLC open solo 401k and contribute both employee, self-employment, or employer contributions? If so, what is the maximum amount, and are these deductions tax deductible?
This is a great question because it's such a typical situation.
Hi, it's Michael Senoff with HardToFindSeminars.com. Thanks for watching this video. You know, many of my interviews last 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour, sometimes even up to 2.5 hours long. They're actual mini seminars, and you've just listened to a short sample of just one of over 117 hours of exciting, hard-hitting, mind-blowing interviews on how to make money in direct mail, advertising, copywriting. I assure you, there is not a resource anywhere on the internet or on the planet that comes close to the free information I provide at hardtofindseminars.com. So go right now to hardtofindseminars.com, and you'll have free access to 117 hours of audio interviews with typed word-for-word downloadable transcripts and downloadable MP3 files. Please browse some more of the videos or go right directly to hardtofindseminars.com. Thanks for watching.